One of the main and one of the most important components you'll find on the motherboard is the chipset. All the motherboards will designed with a lot of different chips scattered all over the motherboard. There are chips for different things like chips for bus controller, memory controllers, keyboard controllers and so on. So they have a lot of chips controlling different functions on the motherboard. So as technology progressed, computer engineers decided to reduce the number of chips and have them in more centralized location. So instead of having these different chips scattered all over the motherboard controlling different functions, they reduced the number of chips to do the same job and condensed them only a few chips, or which now called a chipset. And that's what a chipset is. A chipset is a smaller set of chips that has replaced a larger amount of chips. And a chipset's job is to control the data flow between the CPU, peripheral bus slots and memory. So all of the different parts of the computer communicate with the CPU through the chipset. The chipset basically consists of two chips. North bridge, South bridge. North bride. The North bride is located in the upper or the northern part of the motherboard, providing and you are looking at the motherboard in the upright position. It's located near the CPU, and it is directly connected to the CPU. It is also directly connected to the memory, RAM, and AGP, PCIe Express slots. So in order for the CPU to communicate with the memory and the AGP, PCIe bus, it has to go through the North bridge first. So the North bridge acts as a communication middleman between a CPU and AGP, PCIe and RAM. South bridge. The other chip is called South bridge. The South bridge is located at the bottom or southern portion of the motherboard near the PCI bus slots. The South bridge connects to the PCI bus slots, SATA and IDE connectors and USB ports. So the South bridge is responsible for the lower portion of the motherboard, while the North bridge is responsible for the upper portion. There is no direct connection between CPU and the lower portion of the motherboard. So if the PCI, USB, IDE or SATA ports needed to communicate with the CPU, the information has to go through the South bridge and up through the North bridge and then to the CPU. The North bridge is faster than the South bridge. And that's because of the CPU, PCIe, AGP RAM, memory are the most used and most important components of the motherboard. So the need of operate at a higher speed possible. The slower South bridge communicate with the PCI bus, SATA, IDE connectors and USB ports. And they need to be as fast as the other components. So basically the higher speed components are connected to the North bridge. And the slower components are connected to the South bridge. Now both the North and South bridge make these connections to various parts of the motherboard using pathways called a bus. Bus is simply a set of pathways that allows data and signals to travel between components on the motherboard. The motherboard contains several kinds of buses that vary in speed and bandwidth. So for example, if a bus speed is said to operate at 66 MHz, then that means that particular bus can send data at 66 million cycles per second. The higher the bus speed, the faster the computer can send bus data, which improves the performance of the computer. A motherboard's bus speed generally refers to the speed of front-side bus. Front-side bus is the connection between the CPU and the North bridge chipset. If the explanation is good, please like, share and subscribe for more knowledge.